Isten áldjon, God bless you. My name is Előd, Szabó. I am a Unitarian minister in Ürmös, a town located in the southeastern corner of Transylvania, in the center of Romania, near the city of Brașov. I came to the United States together with my family. My wife, Kata, is a preschool teacher. My older son, Magor, is 7 years old. The younger, Regő, is 4. Our congregation has around 580 members. Around 80 of them, mostly young families, live in the city, or somewhere even further, some of them in Western European countries. The town is inhabited by 3 ethnic groups: the Roma, Hungarians, and Romanians. There is a sense of rivalry, and there are some tensions between these different ethnic and religious groups. But through the decades and the centuries, people in general have developed a natural way of accepting and respecting each other. Even though Transylvanian Unitarian history is a long narrative about a religious and ethnic minority struggling for survival under often adverse rulers and governments, we Unitarians in Ürmös are a majority. As we speak about the rich heritage of religious tolerance and freedom, we also have many opportunities of speaking and acting in the name of these high ideals. Our partner church in the UU community is the First Unitarian Universalist Church of New Orleans, which we have visited last month. I came to the United States through a scholarship called after an early 20th century Transylvanian Unitarian minister and poet, Francis Balázs, who also traveled in the United States to study and to meet American Unitarian brothers and sisters. The scholarship brings a Unitarian minister from Hungary to Berkeley every year to study at the Star King School for the Ministry. Besides studying, the aim of this scholarship is to strengthen the relationships between you, American Unitarian Universalists, and us, Unitarians in Transylvania and Hungary. Transylvania is a small paradise. It has high and wild mountains with beautiful forests, mild lands just perfect for agriculture, fountains, springs, streams, and rivers, and lots of wealth under the surface too: minerals, raw materials, even gold, healing waters as a remembrance of ancient volcanic activity. One of our Transylvanian Hungarian writers entitled his book about Transylvania The Garden of Fairies. Transylvanians consider their home a mythical, legendary land, which is in fact the middle of the earth, the most important part of creation. Of course. Transylvania does not only have a rich natural diversity, but its population is highly diverse too. It is inhabited by Hungarians and Romanians, Székely people who are a Hungarian-speaking ethnic group with Han origins. Maybe Attila's name is familiar to many of you. Saxons and Schwabs, German-speaking population, invited to this country by medieval kings of Hungary to fill the demographic void after the Tatars emptied whole regions in their way. Wandering Roma people with their own specific way of thinking and living, and lively music and authentic dances. Armenians and Jews who were the traders of towns and villages. We Transylvanian Unitarians like to remember that there was a time in the 16th century when this fairyland was one of the few places in Europe where religious freethinkers were welcomed instead of being threatened with prison or burning on the stake. We need to accept this diversity. And more than that, we need to acknowledge the wealth of this diversity and become aware that this land will be a fairyland for all of its ethnic groups, or it will be a hell of constant struggles and conflicts for all of us. There is no way in between. If you will ever come and visit us in Transylvania and consider this an invitation, you will understand our feelings and our love for our homeland. But if I have to think about other wonderful places of the world, I realize we have seen a few centers of the universe in the last 6 months that we have spent in the United States. California, Louisiana, Washington State, and Hawaii have offered us wonderful learning experiences and the possibility to meet people and communities. Sacred places where people and communities realized they live on sacred places and are committed to the sacred principles and goals of justice, equality, and compassion between human beings and in the whole world. I am grateful to be here with you today in this community, but we are grateful for our experience through this scholarship. Let me tell you a story of the Bible, of the Old Testament, which speaks about how I perceive my learning and my encounters and our wonderful journey in this fascinating country. Joseph was one of the 12 sons Jacob had. He is the chosen one, the one most loved by his father. His brothers are not delighted with his status of this and with the boy's pride and arrogance. One day they have the possibility to get rid of him forever. At first they want to kill him, but in the end they decide to sell him to traders, and he travels to Egypt to become a slave. Although he goes through terrible moments, he tastes the bitterness of injustice. He always tries to hold on to his faith and to his honesty and values. He ends up to be the second most powerful leader of Egypt after the Pharaoh. And he is in charge of feeding people during the 7 years of drought. His brothers arrive to Egypt seeking grain to help their families to survive and stand before their brother Joseph, but they don't recognize him. In the end, Joseph reveals himself to them. So Joseph said to his brothers, "Come near to me, I pray you." And they came near, and he said, "I am your brother Joseph, whom you sold into Egypt. And now do not be distressed or angry with yourselves, because you sold me here. For God sent me before you to preserve life. For the famine has been in the land these 2 years, and there are yet 5 years in which there will be neither plowing nor harvest. And God sent me before you to preserve for you a remnant on earth, and to keep alive for you many survivors." Joseph suffered a lot. He may have felt life is not right with him, but one thing he always kept him going was faith. The strong belief that there is a greater will and wisdom in the world than his. He was convinced that everything has a meaning, everything happens with a reason, even if that reason is not always clear for him. And when his brothers stood there hungry for food, hungry for mercy, he realized at once the reason for his adventurous and difficult journey. And this discovery made it possible for him to forgive. He hadn't seen the evil and jealous brothers who wanted him disappeared, but he saw brothers who needed help, needed food, needed encouragement. He hadn't seen the sinful brothers. He just simply saw the brothers. As a Unitarian, I believe in the freedom of the will. But as years and experiences pass by, I realize that there are many things in my life that I decided about, but many important happenings were independent of my will. I didn't choose my origins, my ancestors, my parents. And if I think deeply, decisions about my ministry and my marriage are also not just my rational decisions. I live and serve with a firm conviction that besides my will, not luck, not fate, and not coincidence influenced my life, but some other powerful wisdom that, like Joseph, I call God. This belief is one of the foundations of my ministry. This is how I deal with challenges that come along. This is how I am able to realize that I was too proud sometimes, or I wasn't thoughtful enough, to others, just like Joseph was towards his brothers. This belief helps me accept mistakes and failures, which are parts of a constant learning process. This belief helps me to accept things and people, situations and experiences that I cannot understand. This belief helps me to ask for forgiveness and to forgive others and myself. The other important element of my ideal leadership is made clear by Jesus, who says to his disciples, "I am the good shepherd. I know my own, and my own know me." For Jesus and for his people, it was obvious that knowing each other is the same as loving each other. How much wisdom there is in this assumption. Let's just look at it from the opposite angle. When does hate have a chance in people's life, in the life of communities? When people are strangers to each other, when they don't know each other. Politicians in Romania are using this distance between people a lot. They like to threaten. They threaten Hungarians with Romanians, and they threaten Romanians with Hungarians. But Hungarian and Romanian families that have been neighbors for generations will not believe these threats because they respect each other, they trust each other, they know each other, and yes, they even love each other. But the threatening system will still work fine, build hatred, and bring votes when people are lazy and narrow-minded enough to remain strangers to each other. It has happened a lot in history. It is happening now, and I know it is not only happening in Romania, but even here in American politics and society. Making efforts to know each other is a sacred responsibility, not only towards each other, but also towards a future of justice and peace. One of the first things I did in my congregation when I began my ministry in 2007 was to visit every family. I visited my people many times since then, formally and informally. I meet them on the streets and in the church. We party together and mourn together. We worship and play together. And I always learn something new about their lives, thoughts, and feelings. I know them because I love them. I love them because I know them. They know me because they love me, and they love me because they know me. I don't exactly know which is the right order, but I am convinced that no one can fuel hatred among us. Through the 12 years I have been serving in the community, not everything went perfectly. There were bad mistakes, we had arguments. The minister and people got upset many times. We didn't always understand each other, but love rooted in knowledge always helped us to step forward and to step towards each other. My studies and experiences enforced me in my beliefs during the first semester spent at Berkeley. My plan from back home was to learn about preaching and find new elements and possibilities on this field that I could take home with me, refreshing my sermons written for Transylvanian pulpits. But my plan had a difficulty. There were no preaching courses in the first semester, so members of the scholarship committee had set up an individual skill with the Reverend John Burans, former president of the UUA. It wasn't only a preaching class, but I have also discovered a great guide for learning more about Unitarian Universalist history and UU present too. It wasn't my plan, my will. I believe I had to meet him, and so it happened. The other 3 classes I took were about church leadership and justice ministry. In my notes taken at those classes, I came to realize that I ended up with a few answers to my questions and hundreds of new questions I have never thought of. A few years ago, Transylvanian Unitarians looked for a short definition of our religion. One of the best definitions in my reading sounded like this: Unitarianism, religion of the great questions. The roots of Christianity are Jesus' questions regarding his own people's religion and the society of his age. Transylvanian and European Unitarianism have their origins in questioning the traditional doctrines of Christianity. If we Unitarians want to step forward and grow, we need to keep on asking new, challenging questions that may disturb our comfort zone, but without them we will become fossils of our own past. So I may have come to study in Berkeley and find answers. That was my will. Some other, more powerful and wiser will decided I needed new and challenging questions. And here are some of these questions. How does our theology approach issues like immigration, gender rights, poverty, corruption, climate issues? Can we ground our answers in eternal divine laws instead of giving answers that current political groups expect us to give? What can we learn about our past, our history, of which we are so proud? Can we renew and apply the principles of religious and spiritual freedom and tolerance to modern days, to the complicated problems of our age and society? Could we be part or even initiators of interfaith organizations that can identify common values and goals beyond the differences in our creeds and theology? We know our past, our history, as individuals, as families, as larger faith or ethnic communities. This knowledge makes us love these communities with their glorious and painful moments. Living in this past seems very comfortable because it gives us the false safety of an unchanging world. But instead of simplifying our issues and our responsibilities, we need challenging questions which take us to the very heart of our present time and wakes our conscience regarding our future, regarding the future of our communities. I am convinced it isn't a coincidence that we as a family enjoy UU hospitality in these 11 months. It is not a coincidence that I have the chance of studying at one of the most progressive seminaries in the world. It is not a coincidence that we have visited congregations, UU communities that are bravely stating their beliefs and are also brave enough to show their principles in their actions and everyday lives. It is not a coincidence that our son goes to school in a first-grade class in which he is together with children of at least 12 ethnic groups. It is not a coincidence that we met wonderful, committed leaders who are passionate about their ideals and are capable of convincing others to join the quest for a dreamed better world. In a few months, in June, we will go back home to our congregation. But we are going back with lots of wonderful experiences, many thoughts and feelings through which we changed many things in our worldview. I pray for all of us that one day we will all realize the real deep reason for which we had to meet. We had to spend time together. The reason for us to admire this wonderful land. Until then, let's be brave and free messengers of love, of peace, of brotherhood and sisterhood, even when the chances of success seem to be irrationally weak. Believing that those who love God, who love justice and love others, will always own the most influential power that is the heart of our ministry, our lives, our communities, and the heart of the creation too. May we be blessed with such love and such faith. Amen.